Video we are going to create our first migration file, and we are going to run that migration and see how does it change our database, and then we are going to add those fields into the entity class, right? So here you can see we have already created this migration file, create user table, and it has added a epoch time, which I've already mentioned the use of epoch time, right? So now, as the name suggests here, right, create user table. So this migration file would basically deal with creating a user table, right? So there are two ways of doing that. So firstly is like you can just execute raw query here itself, create table, and in the down statement you just mention drop table. Or there is a more TypeScript way of doing it, is like you create a table and then you run up query to create that table and down query to drop that table. So for that we are going to create a table here. So let's say user table of type table, right? We're going to import this. Is equal to new table. Now this table class have two things, name and columns, apart from a couple of other things. So we are going to provide a name, the table name, and the columns, the list of the columns, right? So here let's say the name of our table be users, right? And then columns be an array. Now let's say we are going to have just three columns, the ID, email, and name, right? So firstly we are going to create a ID column. So if you go back to this table options here, you click it. So these are the parameters that table each column will take, right? Column name, column type. So these two are the required fields, and others are the default or non-required fields. So let's say name of this column be ID, type be integer. Then again we have this is generated. So basically this will create a auto generated field. So we mark as true, and then we need to mention how this field will be generated. So it has a couple of options here: generation strategy, UUID, increment, and row ID. So it's going to use increment, and since it's the ID, we are going to make it is primary key as true. So that's it. Now the second field be name, email, type as string, is nullable. We don't want this field to be nullable, so it's nullable. False is unique. True, we want this field to be unique. And so that's all. The third field be, let's say, full name. So again we are going to add name, full name, string, and is nullable true. So let's say name is optional and we don't want it to be unique, so it's unique false, right? So here we have created our user table. We have provided the name of the table and we have given the columns here. So as you have saw that this table have table option, it has couple of more things, like you can mention indices, you can mention foreign keys, the checks, all those things, constraints. So you can mention that. So we are just going with a simple columns. So now in the query runner, we are going to use this object to create table. So this query runner has a couple of functions. So query runner create table, and we just give this dot user table, and so await, right? So this when we do run the migration, so this will run the up query, which will create a table. Now for the down, it need to be just opposite of that. So query runner so that's it, right? So we have our first migration file ready. Okay, it's fine. So we have created our first migration. Now we have to add these columns as a member in entity class, right? So we have our entity class is empty. We will open it in a split mode. So ID is a primary key is generated field. So we are going to use primary column for that. ID is a number field. The second field is email. So we are just a normal column. String. And third we have full name. So now see here full name is a snake case name, right? So first way is doing full name is like we can mention full name string, right? But we don't want this snake case name here, because in our code we are generally using camel case, right? So we will just use full name here, and in the column it has couple of options. So if we click here, we go to this options. So it have this name here, right, with the optional field. So we need to mention what's the name in the database, right? So we come here, we provide the name as full name. So basically it will just tell that this full name column in the user table needs to be referred as full name here, like this. So one more thing, so here we have created a table and we have given the table name user. So we need to tell to our entity that this is the table name. So in the entity we have a couple of options. One of them is name. So it's a table name, right? So if you don't specify this option, it will assume that table name is based on this class name. So probably in this case it will assume user underscore entity, but we have to tell him that our table name is user. So we just paste it users, right? So a better way of keeping record of these names is we just create a enum. So if we just create a like table name or ts file, export enum table name, and we have user is equal to users. So we will just use directly this. Similarly here, migration, right? So to run the migration, we need to go back to this CLI thing. So we need to add a script, this script. So basically this will run our migration using TS node. TS node means it will use our TypeScript files to run the migration, not the compiled JS file, right? So we just copy this and add this to our script in package. Now to run the migration, we just need to run this command. So we can either run it by npm run or yarn. So let's use yarn here. So we do yarn. Okay, yarn copied. TypeORM. Okay, so I think there is some issue with the migration. Okay, so that was a small bug. So let's run the migration again. Okay, so you have see a couple of things happen here. So firstly, it's selected star from migrations table. So basically, apart from all the tables that you create in the database, this TypeORM have one extra table which is migration, so which it used to keep a track of what all migration has been run and what all not. Okay, so here it has seen from migrations table that 0 migrations are loaded into database and there is 1 migration in the source code, so it's executed that, right? So it has created a table for the user, and you see whatever you have mentioned there, it's everything is here. Now if you run this migration again, nothing will happen because TypeORM will just store that it has already run this migration. Okay, no migrations are pending. So let's see whether this migration has created the actual table in database. So we create a new terminal. We will open this file and we're gonna see schema users. Okay, so this is the table that it has created. Again, we will see the migrations table. So this is the migrations table it has created. So it just keep two things: ID, timestamp, and name. So let's see what's there in migration. So we do select star from. Okay, so just this class, right? So that's how it keep a track of what all migration has run, which order. So that's it. So we have our first migration ready, and we have our entity which is mapping to this table users in the database. In next video we are going to see how to query this table using user entity.